Hello Baggies fans and welcome to a video here on the Baggies Podcast channel. Now today you probably think, well, what's he doing here? This isn't a Monday, this isn't 5 o'clock on a Monday. It's not time for the podcast yet. In fact, the podcast was only a couple of days ago. Well, in fact, this is a special video. It's one that I'm trying to make every so often, perhaps a bit more regularly now we're in a sort of lockdown. So this is a video on why West Brom's transfer window could be so crucial, or something like that. I haven't quite worked out the title, but it'll be something along those lines. But I'm going to raise a few points as to why they're so important and why they could make or break our season. Obviously, this transfer window is a big chance for us to get in the vital players we need to stay in the Premier League. So, without further ado, before we get into this video, make sure you're dropping a like on the video, you're subscribing, and make sure that you're dropping a comment on who you'd like to see us sign, because I'm hoping to make a video just like that very soon, and I need you guys' input. So if you're new to the channel, make sure you're liking, subscribing, turn your notifications on, all that good stuff. But without further ado, let's get into this video on why this transfer window could be so crucial for West Bromwich Albion.
So the first thing I've got jotted down is that it's Big Sam's first window in charge here at West Bromwich Albion. Obviously, at other clubs, he's had a bit more perhaps time, but he's been coming into a January transfer window on the same sort of in the same sort of situation. Down near the bottom of the table, we need you to survive. Can you bring in the business in January to help us survive? And obviously, he's going to be given the sort of resources that he needs to survive. He wouldn't come if the resources weren't there. Not sure why they weren't there for Bilic. Obviously, a bit of a rift between the board and the manager in that case. But obviously, that sort of resource has been there for Sam Allardyce to use. It's not been a particularly massive resource, but obviously he thinks it's probably enough to allow him to survive in the Premier League with West Brom. As we know, he's already brought in one signing, which is Robert Snodgrass from West Ham. I'm saying this after the West Ham. I'm just recording this after the West Ham game. Obviously, Snodgrass not allowed. We're going to have some problems perhaps with the Premier League about that because we agreed not to play him in the game. So that's going to be difficult. So we've already bought him in, and he's been a hit with the fans. In the Wolves game, he showed us desire, determination, graft, grit, Premier League know-how, which is something that which we have been lacking. We've got not a lot of Premier League experience in the side. There's only a certain few players who have played Premier League football week in, week out. Snodgrass being one of them now. So to provide that Premier League, it's almost a streetwise style of play, knowing exactly, when to play the pass, when to waste a bit of time, knowing exactly what to do. And he's going to help a lot of the young players in the squad to become a bit more streetwise themselves. Big Sam also has never had to work on this sort of amount of budget before. In the modern era, I mean. So if you look at the size of the budget at Crystal Palace, Everton, he went and spent 30 million plus on players. He's not got that here. I'm hearing no more than 2 million per player. So it's going to be loans, going to be short-term deals like Snodgrass, and it's going to be plenty of that sort of stuff. So if that's happening, he's never had to work on this kind of budget in the modern era. He could have probably got away with this. When he did actually, when he was manager of Blackburn, Sunderland, those sorts of games, those sorts of clubs that he's managed, gave him that sort of budget, but it was about, 10 years ago. So he's obviously had that sort of budget thrust into him in a difficult era, a difficult time of life for everybody. And obviously teams are going to be looking to sell players, and they're going to be looking to get rid of them for a bit of money, because teams need money at the moment, and we certainly need money. But Big Sam is obviously going to be allowed that sort of money, he seems to think it's enough. So he's never had to work on this kind of budget before, which means that it could come a cropper for him, potentially if things don't go his way. It's also crucial for him to get in signings he wants in order to fit his system. Bear in mind, we've got to put Bilic behind us. I'm a big, Bilic fan, but, he's gone. He's gone to another club. He's not ours. We've got Big Sam. We've got a deal, and we've got to put up with it, I'm afraid. As much as I don't particularly want to, it's just got to be the way it's just got to be the way it is. It's pretty annoying, but it's the way it's got to be. He wants to play more direct playing style, so therefore he's going to need some players that are going to fit this solid and stern approach to football. Whether that be midfielders who can screen the back four, which is I'm going to go on to talk about in a minute. Striker who can hold up the ball. It's going to be something we need. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But so Sam Allardyce has got to prove that this game hasn't moved on from him. He's got something to prove to everybody. People are saying, I've seen many people saying, the game has moved on from Big Sam. Now, I think perhaps it has, but it's his chance to prove everybody wrong. It's his chance to bring in the players that he knows can keep him up. Has the game moved on from Sam? It probably has. It's a completely different world. You imagine he didn't even manage when he was with VAR at Everton. The game has progressed a lot. So the game might have moved on from Big Sam, but he's certainly got a lot to prove, and a lot to prove to supporters that he's still got it in him to know how to stay in the Premier League. Another thing is that the spine of the team needs improving. Strikers up front for West Bromwich Albion have scored 3 goals since their return to the Premier League. They haven't been good enough. Be it, I do like Robinson, I like Grant, I think Grant's going to be a good player for us. I like Robinson, I like his effort levels, but I don't think he's particularly a striker. He's obviously a bit more of a winger. He does a good job up front, but 3 goals in between, or this is including Carnifs, including Austin, including all the strikers that have played. 3 goals between them. That is pretty shambolic. We appear to have the worst defence in the league as well. It's statistically correct. We conceded the most goals. We just struggled to keep the ball out the back of the net. So that's another problem with the spine. You look at the midfield, in the middle, central defence and attack. In the midfield, we keep giving the ball away. We keep just losing possession cheaply, and you can't do that at this level. Teams are going to punish you. Teams have punished us very easily. 5-1 to Crystal Palace, who are not a fantastic Premier League side. They're a good, solid Premier League side, but they shouldn't be beating you 5-1. None of the current strikers also fit Sam's system. He wants a big, tall striker who can hold up the ball and bring others into play. Zahor perhaps could be that option, but his loan has been extended at Millwall by Big Sam. He's authorised it, so he obviously doesn't think his work ethic is perhaps good enough, which I probably agree with. I think he perhaps does fit his system, but he's not the player for Big Sam, I don't think, with his work ethic. So there's obviously need for a big target man. Defence has looked slightly better of late. The desires looked much better, especially in the Wolves and West Ham game recently. So, some reinforcement to help that squad depth. If you look at the bench we played today and across the past few games, you look at that and think who's going to come on and change the game. Edwards, Carney, the only 2 attacking options on that bench. I'd like to see Edwards get a bit more of a go. Carney, good for coming on in the last few minutes when you need to grind out a result to win some fouls and get you at the pitch. But apart from that, not really much use for a lot. The squad depth is pretty bad, albeit we've been, had a few injuries and a few, COVID cases, which is pretty annoying and is completely unprecedented, especially in these sorts of times when before COVID, you wouldn't have that problem. It's just a sign of the times, really, at the moment. The centre and midfield has looked woeful at times, and the exception of that has been Gallagher, and he's on loan. I can't see us bringing him in on a permanent deal, but we need more players like him. We need somebody to screen that back four. You saw Declan Rice today for West Ham, does it perfectly, does a wonderful job. I'm not sure whether I prefer him or Calvin Phillips, but they both do an adequate job for England. But, we just need somebody to screen that back four, and then we get, 2 of the players around them to do the running. Hamza Chowdhury's been one we talked about, perhaps on loan. But the spine of the team needs desperate improvement. It's something that needs to be addressed in order to stay up. We're not sure whether we're going to be able to get the deals that we want. As Sam said, he's going to end up making 250 plus inquiries, to players across the world to try and get them to come and play for West Brom on a short-term, cheap deal, loan deal, whatever it is. He's going to be looking to get that. And for me, he needs to improve the spine of the team before he starts going any further, perhaps addressing the fullback issue. It's something he needs to do before he starts to address it, before he starts addressing other issues. But the spine of the team does need improvement, and that is going to help us stay up, and that's why the transfer window could be so important. This transfer window, I'm sure you're aware, is actually the last transfer window before the end of the season. So it's almost a last chance saloon for West Bromwich Albion to pick up some vital players. Survival is within reach. It's not gone yet. It's not quite over. It might be very soon, but it's not quite over. There's still points to be played for. I feel as soon as it becomes close to being over, I think Big Sam might go. But, you could at least give things a bit of a go. Bring in the reinforcements you need to make the team better. The complete change in recruitment is drastic. You've gone from signing young players, Dean Garner, Pereira, Grant, and now you're looking at oldies and you're looking at short-term deals. But it's just the way that things have happened at the club. There is a problem at the club from top to bottom, and particularly at the top with the management of the club. I think this needs to be addressed personally. But at the moment, you've got to stick with what you got. You've got Big Sam in charge. You've just got to back him, I'm afraid. If you're a West Brom fan, you've just got to look at it and back it. It's the last chance saloon for West Brom to stay in the Premier League. 2 or 3 additions could see us over the line for me, especially down that spine of the team. You get in 3 quality additions, a defender, a striker, and a midfielder. You could be in with a chance of staying up. It just could happen. Big Sam won't want his relegation on a CV. It's just not something he wants. He might walk before it happens, but he won't want it on his CV whatsoever. He needs hard-working players to reinforce a squad which has been a bit flimsy mentally at times. When the ball goes in the back of the net, we look dejected, we look unhappy, we look like we can't bring ourselves up from that. So, in my opinion, it's a last chance saloon for West Brom survival hopes. It needs to happen. Additions need to come in. Big Sam needs to pull out, the Premier League know-how which he needs to prove to people that he's still got. And see if he can bring in some players which are going to help us survive. Snodgrass has been a hit so far. Lonergan's another addition, but I don't think we'll ever see him make the pitch, to be honest. But in a COVID world, you could end up seeing him play. It's going to be a huge, huge transfer window for West Bromwich Albion, and Big Sam and the team behind the scenes need to ensure that it's one that's going to change our season and change our fortune. But that does bring us to the end of this video, so that is why this transfer window could be so crucial for West Bromwich Albion. There's so many factors that could lead to us staying up, and so many wrongdoings in this window could lead to us going down. It is so pivotal that they get things right in order to stay up. But that brings us to the end of this video. If you haven't watched the recent podcast, it came out, episode 28 last Monday. If you want to watch it, it'll be up here about now. You can be able to watch it, on Spotify or Apple Podcasts if you just want the audio. If you want to watch a video version of the podcast, it's available on YouTube. It's just on this playlist that's up here at some point now. So you can go and watch that now, or you can go and listen to it and download it on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. But that brings us to the end of this. If you want to go and follow my Twitter as well to get involved in the podcast and get involved in future videos, make sure you go and do that. And also leave a comment as to who you think we should sign this window. I'd like to hear it, and I'd like to include it in a future video. But that brings us to the end of this video. Make sure you like and subscribe, turn your notification bell on, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.